for me, there's nothing like playing the real game and being out there. So I don't think it can ever replace that.
If I died and gone to heaven, I was fine because I'd done it.
Number 7 and 11 locked into the final third.
Welcome to the Daily Coaching Football Show, where we talk football, insight, player and coach development. This is your host, David Webb, and I'm absolutely delighted today to announce that my guest coach with me is Sean. Sean, massive welcome and thank you for joining me. If you can you let the viewers and listeners know a little bit about you and tell them who you are?
How you doing, David? You okay?
Fantastic, thank you.
So basically, my name's Sean Malcom. I've been coaching for about 21 years now, since I was 16 years old. I've just finished working for Juventus Football Club. I'm currently running a project called Footy Consultancy to support players, coaches and parents. And I'm currently a UEFA A licensed coach with Youth Mod 3.
Fantastic. Wealth of experience, and I'm really excited to have you on today because I think it's going to be vital to the different discussions and topics which we have coming up for us. So Sean, thank you for joining me, and let's get into our first topic, which is the discussion of the week. So for this week's discussion of the week, we have, is coaching moving into a digital world, and can virtual or online coaching be more beneficial to a player's development? Sean, what's your first thoughts around this topic?
I think it does have some benefits in it. You know, it's better than children sitting home or players sitting home by themselves doing nothing at all. I think it's a useful tool to help them develop a better understanding of football, especially from the theory side. They probably understand more what goes into the preparation from the coaches as well.
100%.
And, you know, for the younger players, a lot of it is used to do a lot of ball mastery and things like that. So I think there's definitely benefit in it. For me, there's nothing like playing the real game and being out there. So I don't think it can ever replace that. But, you know, if this was to occur again, I feel like for some players, there's benefit. Some players, they don't really get engaged with it. They, after a little Zoom, they'll just be completely disconnected. And for some players, there's only so much Zoom they can take. So, yeah.
It's interesting because, like you said, obviously, I think online coaching has become a big thing now. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's around before, but it's become even bigger now because it's all we can do. But I agree with you and what you're saying around the sort of the limitations it has. I think, you know, typically when I think of online coaching, I tend to think of individual ball mastery and, you know, getting lots of touches on the ball, doing little skills, you know, combinations of movements on the ball. And that's great. But I agree with what you're saying. There's nothing like actually being out there on the field. I suppose when you compare it to sort of like your one-to-one coaching, so away from sort of like team training or matches, I wonder whether or not there's an actual benefit to it being online, because ultimately, sometimes I feel that those one-to-one coaches, when you're out on the pitch, although yes, it is all about building relationships with your coach or who you're working with, I kind of feel as though being in your own environment may sometimes help players feel a bit more comfortable and able to perform their movements.
I think it does bring a lot more creativity to the player and maybe some elements of enjoyment being in their own environment. I guess when you're coaching one-to-one, you kind of get into the finer details of technique and movement and body shape that you can address, and you can't really address that online.
100%.
You know, but I do think that if your level of engagement is really fun and has a good rhythm to it, and you use creative ways of engaging with that player, then, you know, I think it can be a real success. And one of the things that is difficult is the other side of one-to-one, which is the psychological and social part. And it's difficult with loads of safeguarding rules to get a child one-to-one and start discussing these types of things, you know. So you could use a parent or guardian or a fellow coach to try and support that in terms of giving that type of one-to-one and developing them as people as well.
Yeah, 100%. It's a key point you picked up on there about the sort of psychological elements of it, and also kind of a bit of the social, I suppose, because typically when I think of, obviously, although I say that online coaching and virtual coaching has become a thing more apparently so during lockdown,
Yeah,
actually, if I take away the football aspects of it, online coaches have been around for years. And obviously,
yeah,
I'm talking about more so as a bit of like a mentor, really.
yeah,
And obviously, typically that coaching will obviously happen online, but obviously it's less practical based stuff, and they don't see you doing your work if we're taking football away from it. But typically they'll be there to discuss and sort of ask questions. And I think sometimes when you do things online,
mm,
can that communication get a bit lost? Because asking questions is one thing, but actually being able to execute or answer that question, but practically, I agree. I kind of think you can only really do it with the individual, because like you said, you can pick up on the techniques, you can pick up on things like such as body positioning or reaction, or all of these key sort of fundamentals.
mm.
So I don't know what you think around sort of the whole questioning type element of it, and whether or not that can kind of be a bit more impacted as well through being online, and communication problems as well, like connection.
I think, yeah, you've got a lot of problems that can arise. And I think if you look at the best players that have developed in this country, what did they used to do? They used to go by themselves and play in a park by
Yeah,
themselves without a coach. And I feel that usually when you ask these players, how did they develop their skills? They'd probably see somebody else do it and go away and practice it themselves.
yeah,
So nothing's really changed from that point of view. And sometimes as coaches, we can make things drag. We could keep a kid there 30 minutes, 45 minutes, and it becomes now against their will. So the art of coaching, whether in person or online, is those quick interventions. Can you get in and out quickly? Do your demo. This is what the skill is like. This is how you break it down. If it's a skill that needs to be broken down, or if it's a holistic skill that can be done in one go. And then you can even send a better example of an expert player doing it online and say, there you go, try and practice that for the week. And then you can see, what's the player about? Is he determined? Has he got the willpower to get up and go out and master that skill? And then, see you next week. What's the next one?
yeah.
So, I think that's a way of doing it that I feel could be successful.
Yeah, no, 100%. And again, it's interesting because I was just about to pick up on that point around sort of like, how many times have you heard coaches who say, like, a bit of like to a player, your homework is, can you go away? Can you look at this YouTube video? Can you try this skill, this move out, and then come back next week at training and actually perform it? And I think you picked up on a great point there around, that's brilliant, because I was going to say, could that actually almost replace a coach and, almost give children or players an opportunity to just self-learn, really, because as you said, it's the imaginative element of things, seeing things, whether it be online, whether it be from friends, and then going out there and trying it yourself. But you picked up on a great point around getting in there and getting out again as a coach, and actually they've got no one there to help them or support them to understand if they're doing it right. Obviously they're copying what's being done on a video or what their friends are doing, but they're seeing it from one situation and one scenario.
Yeah.
They're not seeing it from, maybe, again, this is where the coach comes in and supports it, why that player done that exact move in that situation and in that scenario, rather than just the skill or the movement to an extent.
I know what you mean. And sometimes you look at, players, they go away and they try their best to do that by themselves, and it needs the intercession, should I say, of a coach to try and get them to understand the why now. Why are you doing it? What is the purpose behind it? And when do you do it? What are the triggers for this? And that's where we can support the player a lot better. But one thing I will say is that when I do approach the players for this type of engagement, I tend to say, you know what, there are ever-present skills in the game. These skills will always be there. Passing, heading, shooting, curving the ball, inside. These things will always exist.
Yeah.
You need to have these things. but I still want you to go away and practice your own skill and see what you can come up with.
Yeah.
Because you're a unique individual and your individualism will help you go further.
Yeah, 100%. Like you said, there's the fundamentals, and then there's the things you'll learn, like you said, from a coach or from your team and things like that. And I think, again, great point. Actually, I mean, I sometimes say, and obviously with the discussion I've kind of put out there, is one better than the other, or is one more effective than the other? But I think one of the key things really is it's probably best to do both. And I think sometimes if you speak to an online coach, they will tell you until they've got no more vocabulary left in them, that their way of doing it is the right way to progress. But ultimately, they're selling their program, aren't they? They're selling their program, they're selling their project, they're selling their service. But I agree. I think that actually having this alongside is really probably the key thing here, because it's a coach can only give you so much, because ultimately, let's be honest, you're probably with a coach for an hour a week, maybe 2 hours a week. How much of that is actual ball rolling time? How much is that is it you actually being on the ball individually yourself? So there is that element there. But on that point as well, I mean, we talk about online coaching and online programs, and I'll be honest with you, I suppose if people have got the funds and the finances to be able to afford online programs, because let's be honest, they're probably quite expensive, and hasn't really cut down too much in the lockdown either. But one of the big things I've always seen, especially when I've done like schoolwork years ago, the amount of players that don't even have access to footballs in their house. So then the question comes, well, how can you actually do online coaching? I know through some of these Zoom sessions, people have tried to be creative and use like different equipment around the house, but there's nothing like actually playing with the ball.
Yeah.
So sometimes it gets a bit lost.
Yeah, and that's where, it's the biggest sport in the country, and that's where possibly the authorities, like there's so much money with the Premier League and with the FA that they could probably cut back on a few bits of wages and just say, here you go, everyone, here's a football each for a £5. Do you know what I mean? And problem solved.
No, 100%. And it's interesting as well, you talk about authorities, something which just may come to my mind just then. When, and don't get me wrong, sometimes even with teams, you could question this as well, but with like the online programs and online coaching, there's almost no sort of like validation as to the service that is there. I mean, people are putting it out, but what's to say that that individual or that coach or that program or that platform, their way of working, their learning, their education to the children is the right way of doing things? Because typically you'll see it kind of, almost repel against, say, for example, the FA way of doing things, and it'll be a totally different or new initiative. So how do you think that the problems will kind of arise when there's no actual accreditation to a program or platform that is being set up?
The issue is that there's so many different cultures and mentalities within the country.
Yeah. And
there's nothing wrong with having different cultures or different mentalities. But what you find is the validation comes from the parents.
Yeah.
Because what they see is, okay, this person, he might be doing things that look pretty much wrong, but his players have played for England, Ireland, Crystal Palace, so on and so. And then this guy, he sounds like he's doing things right. He seems friendly, but his players play for Dog and Duck United. So it's like, who do I go to? I'll go to this guy because these players have gone further. So sometimes you might have a person that just does the same drills over and over again. He's got great personality, but he just sticks to what he knows because he's getting success out of it. He doesn't want to change nothing. Even if it means it inhibits the development of the player. As long as that player goes and gets signed, it's fine. They're not thinking about him getting released. They're just thinking about getting signed. So there's so many variables that are happening within different communities in the country. And, it's really difficult to say you're wrong and you're right, and, all we can do is, go off of guidelines and see what is best practice. How did the players feel about it? And come as close as we can to facilitating for the players and their enjoyment and getting the best out of them that we possibly can.
100%. And do you know what? You picked up on a quote a little while ago, and it's exactly what I say as well. Things are a way to do it. And that's the best way of looking at things, because ultimately you're not selling, you're not selling the solution or the answer. You're saying, look, this is a way to do it. Other people may do it differently, and that's fine. But this is the way in which I do it, and it's just a way. And I think what's interesting with like online programs, typically, if it is a program rather than just regular sessions, typically coaches will kind of pre-plan ahead of that. So, I'm thinking of some sort of like projects or courses that are out there online at the moment, and they may have, say, for example, like a 6-week block of work, but it's like, what happens after that? All fair enough to get these people in and do your work for 6 weeks, but then what happens? And because it's so kind of I say generic, but generic in the terms of it's not specialized to that individual that's going to be signing up to the online program, then is there really a benefit to the player? Because it's not personalized for them, which they might get at their own training, which they attend to on the grass almost.
I feel that it's really difficult, because these are coaches that have got to make a living at the same time. And unfortunately, like, you have a 6 weeks holiday, and then after that, it changes again. The situation of the player changes, the situation of the coach changes, and all we can do as coaches is give the best we can in the time that's available, and say, you know what, I might only have 6 weeks, but I'm going to give you this program to try and nail down some fundamentals that are going to help you go further to the next step. And that's a way of looking at it. You got some people that obviously just in it for the money and charging ridiculous prices, and some people charge a ridiculous price, but they're doing a good job. Some people aren't. So I'd say that it's just understanding that this is the nature of this country and the time that's available, and this is probably the reason why people do it in this way. But in terms of block of work, like you said, it's not really tailored to the individual. So, that stuff is generic, and you might not get much success out of it.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, I think you're right. I think people have kind of done it in this way because, like, at the times that we're in, I mean, I personally would like to see this sort of stuff stay around as well. But again, as a way of doing things, and in addition to the normal type of training that you typically see. Because I think, number one, it gives you more tools. I think number two, it's kind of that sort of virtual homework, as we've kind of touched on, about things they can do away from training, a bit of a guide or path to make sure that they're on the right way or the right track. But ultimately, it's tough because, like you said, people got to earn a living, and people put time and effort into these sort of programs and projects. And I kind of feel as though there is so much detail that needs to go into this, or should go into this, should go into this, that to ask coaches to do that in addition. Because I was going to say, potentially, say for example, you've got a team, like you teach your team during the week. Obviously they play their matches at the weekend, but if there's something which you can have running alongside that, which maybe you do in advance, even better, because players who maybe can't attend a certain week for whatever reason, or can't get down to a session for whatever reason, there's that as well. Like, it just does require so much thinking from a coach to have that alongside.
Exactly. And the amount of planning it takes to do one session plan, imagine tailoring that to 40 or 50 players. It's like there's not enough time in the week for it.
100%. I think it's an interesting sort of thing that's come about during lockdown. I think that virtual coaching has popped up a lot more. I had a discussion the other week about coaches versus mentors, and for me, an online coach is a bit more like a mentor rather than just a coach. because a coach is, like you mentioned before, picking up on the technical details, understanding where, when to go and get in and allow the player to understand why they're doing certain things. Whereas online coaching, maybe you've got a bit of a closer relationship with that individual and you're asking more questions or getting asked more questions, and they're supporting you a bit more generically, but around a sort of certain syllabus or curriculum almost, I'd say. So that's an interesting one. But great discussion. I think it'll be something which, like I said, I hopefully will like to see it continue, but in addition and not in place with obviously the realistic stuff, because we're all biting at the bit to get back out there and be back out on the field. So but no, for the people listening and watching, make sure you leave your comments below. Let us know what you think. Do you think online or virtual coaching can be more effective? Do you think it's more beneficial? Do you think it's here to stay? Or like we just said there, can't you wait to get back out on the football pitch? So comment below and let us know your thoughts. So for this next part of the show, I set the coach that is with me on the week a challenge of picking a particular five-a-side team. And this week we've gone with a particular challenge around under 21s. So the challenge is a five-a-side team of under 21 players who can become top players with the right coaching. So Sean, who have you picked in your five-a-side team of under 21s who can make it to the top?
Well, I wasn't quite sure what you wanted, so I went for an actual team, and I've started with Donnarumma in goal from AC Milan.
Nice.
The older brother. And I just think he's got some exceptional attributes, his height, footwork, shot stopper. And I've noticed over the last couple of years, he's been exposed to making a lot of mistakes and not really playing in the best Milan team we've seen in history. So I do think with the right coaching and being in the right club, you could probably emulate someone like Edwin van der Sar, people of that stature, even Buffon. He seems like, some things that's lost in this generation, an old school goalkeeper. Then I didn't go for any defenders. I just went for a midfield three.
Nice.
I had Jadon Sancho on the right. And I just think he has, what's common in my midfield three. They all have the aggression. They all have the hunger. They all have the desire to get better. And I feel like Sancho just, he's gone away, left Man City and gone out and proved himself abroad. He's playing in a club that is gonna push you all the way to your limits, and he's thriving in that environment. And he's getting the goals and the assists and getting picked for his country. And he's still under 21. So, if he keeps developing, I feel like he can emulate Raheem Sterling or go a bit further. So. Then I had in the middle, who was it again? Well, I'll go for the left. It was Phil Foden.
Nice.
I just think he's exceptional. And one thing I've looked at in history, Maradona, Gaza, all these types of players, what do? They play with their chest out and their head up. And, this is something we was taught when we was younger, and not many players do that without looking at the ball and are creative and can pass, can finish, can dribble, quick, strong, amazing football player. As a Man U fan, I wish he was at Man United instead. He'll probably start every week and wear the armband and everything. He's a great player.
Nice.
In the middle, it was the 4, the 8, the 10. He wears number 22, Jude Bellingham.
Quality.
Very young player. Again, gone into Dortmund, fearless, strong, competitive. And he's only going to get better when he gets more international football as well. He's in the England squad and he's still a kid. And, I looked at him and he reminds me of like maybe a more technically refined Paul Ince.
Yeah.
Box to box, got the energy, can score goals, can defend, aggressive. I just love him, Just didn't love his choice of dumping United in it. But then up front, it was a tough choice because I've got a few of my subs bench as well. I'll tell you them quickly. But I've gone with Erling Haaland because he's got he's got something that I haven't seen since Ruud van Nistelrooy. Just somebody who, even if he's got a hat trick, he still wants to score another hat trick. Yeah. He keeps going, and he's just got such a wide variety of finishes, and it just looks like it's just easy for him. And I'd love to see him, if he was in a better club like Real Madrid or Man City or United, with more chances being created, what would he do then? So I still think there's a lot more to come from him.
Yeah, no.
It was a tough choice because I had a few players on my bench: Morgan Gibbs-White from Wolves, Mason Greenwood, Karamilka Dembele, Alphonso Davies from Munich. There's a lot of players there, but those guys edged it for me.
No, quality. I'll be honest with you, is that number one, that is a class team. There's no arguing of why anybody's in there at all. And number two, the under 21 scene at the moment. And I mean, I could literally say under 21, under 20, under 19, under 18. That young generation of players coming through, I literally don't have no words for it. Like, there is so much talent coming through. It is unbelievable. And I don't know whether that's down to just, more exposure to the game. I don't know whether it's down to just giving younger players opportunities, because you look at somebody like Jadon Sancho and Jude Bellingham, and not that he wasn't getting, Jadon Sancho wasn't getting the opportunity over here, but Jude Bellingham he was playing, but opportunities at these bigger clubs, and we're now seeing exactly what they can do. It's scary. And there's some key points that you made there, which just want to talk over quickly. So you mentioned about obviously like Donnarumma and sort of the physical and attributes that he has in terms of height, and obviously, like I said, Haaland, goal scorer. Like, for me, when I think back to sort of like your Sunday league level, like, I was a centre back, and I remember I didn't want the strikers to get the ball, but my memories were the strikers just being goal scorers. Like, they didn't take loads of people on. They didn't combine with other people. They got the ball, they turned, they shoot. They got the ball, they shoot. Like, it was nothing like fancy about it, but they were goal scorers. And
it's funny you say that, because I did a comparison to what other clubs had and what Man United had in that successful era. And the main striker for Man United always had to be able to do everything. Andy Cole, Luis Saha, Rooney, Ronaldo, Van Nistelrooy, they had to drop in, build the play up, connect with a wide man, then get in the box and come with a different finish. The traditional Kevin Phillips, Alan Shearer, they were just in the box to finish. But for some clubs, even with Arsenal, Ian Wright, they had to come out of the box. Henry and Elka, they had to do a bit more. Bergkamp, they had to do a little bit more. And that's what made them really special players, because they could get those same 30 goals that was required for them as a number 9 and do the rest. Whereas now it's more like you're just a specialist number 10, or you're a false 9 that drops in, and somebody else has to score the goals for you. But it's coming back. Calvert-Lewin, Ollie Watkins, Callum Wilson, Kane, Ings, the traditional number 9's coming back.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's interesting you mentioned about your midfield three as well, because in my eyes, and I remember my time at the FA about 4 or 5 years ago, there was something where they came in obviously with the England DNA, and they talked about players being creative, and that was a big word they changed around. Don't get me wrong, I've bought into it, and I believe that players should be creative.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I asked a serious question then, and was like, it's fine for players to be creative, but when is it we need them to understand their actual position and really specialists in their position? Because it's fine being creative, but like you just mentioned, actually some of those fantastic number 9s that you mentioned before, where they're not just goal scorers, they come to receive the ball, they can link up with their teammates, they can play it out wide to then get on the end of the ball.
Yeah.
Like, that's so important to have as part of your arsenal as well, to an extent.
Yeah. Definitely.
Because, being in different situations, different scenarios, people quickly button on to the player that just gets the ball and does the same thing over and over and over and over again. So, yes, it's
even players that weren't really recognised in that era. You got people like Jason Ewell, who could do everything.
Yeah.
Plays a holding midfielder, plays a number 10, plays a number 9, arrive in the box late, score with his headers, inside the box, outside the box. Like, it's like if these players were here today, then they'll be mentioned along with these new stars that are, shining now.
Yeah, 100%. And obviously, one of the, like I said, the main reasons why I got you to pick this team is because obviously, like I said, the under 21 team at the moment is absolutely thriving. But
Yeah.
I kind of wanted to pick up on the point of what right coaching is. Now, don't get me wrong, it's a bit of a curveball because it's such a generic term, and what the right coaching is from someone's opinion to another person's opinion is totally different. But for you, obviously, you picked some fantastic players there. What is the type of coaching you feel that a player typically of that sort of talent or ability actually needs to help them get to the top? Is it specific to them? Is it being within the right team? Is it being from the right coach or manager?
I personally, it is down to having the right coach. And I feel like it's not rocket science. They just need to be playing. And we would never have seen them if they weren't given a chance. And the more football you play, the better you're going to get. These guys some of them needed an arm around them. Some of them needed a rollicking. But that was just down to the individual and what they're doing at the time, But everyone needs a different bit of treatment from time to time because you could be indisciplined. You're not going to get an arm around you if you're late. You're going to get a hairdryer, But, there could be times where you're not firing. You need that arm around you. You need somebody to say, you know what, I believe in you. I'm going to keep playing you and keep playing you until you deliver. And then you're going to get more out of that player that way because he knows that you trust him as a coach. So that's the main thing for me.
And as well, on that point, you talk about obviously needing the right support mechanisms, basically. Now, all those players mentioned, I would classify them, even at this early stage, as big stars within the world of football. How important do you think that psychological support is? Because, obviously in a world which we're in at the moment, where there's obviously, a lot of mental health issues, and also as well, the pressure of these young players. I mean, it's incredible how young they are, but there's still so much demand required from them. How important do you think it is through the different stages? So that initial bursting onto the scene to becoming, a guaranteed start or a player, to then making it as, in inverted commas, like top star. How much sort of psychological?
So you probably at the start of this new type of player or generation of player, you probably had Raheem Sterling, came through at 16 years old, and he was under a lot of pressure, a lot of abuse from fans, people behind the scenes, and pundits and so on. And I don't know him personally, but one thing I do know, he's born in Jamaica, and within that culture is, we are told, because my heritage is Jamaican, that you have to be confident in yourself. And this confidence within yourself and not doubting yourself can be a cultural thing, and his ability to overcome all the negativity and turn it into a positive, for me, that comes from his cultural background, and he had the mental strength to, at a very young age, with so much money in his hands, which can also destroy you, to stay grounded, stay connected to his culture, and to thrive and become a superstar. And when people said he wasn't doing enough goals, scores 25 goals a season, and now you don't hear nothing or even praise, but he still keeps going. He's been a really good example of a professional, and because of that example, now these guys can see that are coming through now. Look at the example of this young man here, who's not even 25 yet, but he went through all of that, and look where he is today. So you guys can also achieve that.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think that even if the players don't reach out to them, even if they don't have a close connection with some of the players, like you mentioned, like Raheem Sterling, or for me, Marcus Rashford comes to mind. Just having that inspiration and that sort of idol. And now I think typically we're talking, which is good, and it should be raised a lot more and discussed a lot more. But now we're not only seeing idols within football. Like back in the day, we talk about people like Pele and people like that because of what they can do at their feet. Well, now we're also talking about footballers as people and inspiration and impact that they have on communities, and like you said, from culture, as a person. And I've always said, I think that, you know, and they talk about obviously on the FA courses, how important it is to know the people before the player. By that, like you just said, you know, understanding certain ways. Like a lot of people, I see it so often, people criticize Raheem Sterling as being arrogant. Well, no, like I said, it's coming from culture, it's coming from belief of, do you know what, I'm going to be confident because as much as I'm confident, there's going to be 100 people waiting to knock my confidence back down again. So it's having that sort of internal characteristics, traits, and beliefs, which I kind of feel goes alongside the whole support from a coach psychologically of look at these people and these inspirations, but also as well, know your qualities as an individual, not just as a player almost.
Yeah, I agree. And having that self-belief is something that is a game breaker, you know, it's something that can get you over the line. And some people are not as technically as gifted as others. I've seen some amazing players that this country has never produced in the pro game, like way better than guys as good as Messi I've seen on the streets, believe it or not. They've never made it because of that mentality, you know, and that's the biggest difference.
Yeah, 100%. And it's such an important one as well, because ultimately sometimes, and not all the time, but sometimes coaches cover so much technical focus that all of that's lost. And it kind of goes back to the discussion we had on the first part of the show where we spoke about sort of like, you know, when people are with you for a little bit longer, you kind of become a bit of a mentor. And I think that that's kind of what is needed along the journey. Because typically, think about it, all of these players, obviously, they're all fantastic players, but I wonder how many different coaches they're going to have throughout their career based on nothing to do with themselves, potentially maybe if they make a move. But other than that, you know, coaches getting sacked, new coaches coming in, and, you know, the effects that has on somebody. You know how cutthroat football is. One person likes a player, one person doesn't.
Yeah, it's either you force someone. We done an interview with Jason Lee recently, and he said the same thing. You know, some managers like, you're not for me. And some will support you in getting another club. Some will just freeze you out in the background and leave you to rot. So it's like, and you got two extremes. You got the coach that, you know, looks at all your strengths, and you got the coach that looks at all your weaknesses, you know, and it's like, you know, how do you overcome that if they don't allow you to utilize your strengths that got you there?
Yeah.
You know, so
yeah,
that's a challenge for me really as a player, to have the mental strength to get through that.
Yeah, 100%. I think as well it boils down to, if a coach is highlighting a weakness, either A, what are they then doing to support that into a strength or convert that into a strength, or, you know, sometimes, like you said, it's kind of down to the individual to know, okay, well, that's my weakness, but I know that actually these are my strengths as an individual, or this is how I'm going to overcome it. So yeah, I think it's interesting. But yeah, the under-21 team is absolutely thriving. And like you mentioned about having subs, anybody could have gone into that team. So fantastic five-a-side team. And again, anybody in the comments, make sure you put your thoughts around the team. Do you agree with the five-a-side team? Is there any other players which you think maybe were missed out and could go in the team as well? And maybe you can compare your team against Sean's team and see how the outcome would be. But no, fantastic insight and a fantastic five-a-side team.
So this week on the Daily Coaching Football Show, I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by a very special guest, an ex-professional who has played in over 400 games, representing clubs such as Wimbledon and Newcastle, and also representing internationally for England. I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by the legend that is Warren Barton. Can you remember what the first pair of football boots or football shirt that you ever got was?
I can remember the first football shirt because and thanks for having us on. My brother and my dad and I was born in North London, was an Arsenal shirt. So I remember the yellow one that Alan Sunderland scored the winning goal. against Manchester United in the FA Cup final. So my first official shirt was the yellow one, and people like Charlie Jules. So now I'm really showing my age as well. But my dad was an Arsenal fan, and so obviously with my brother, I was born in North London near Islington, a place called Stoke Newington. So, there was only a mile away from Highbury. So I was a big Arsenal fan with the likes, as I said, was at the time Alan Sunderland, Liam Brady's my hero. So that was the first shirt that I had, being that as well. And I think I'm way back when it was the old studs, would have been a pair of Adidas. I'm sure they was called Brazil. Called Brazil. But a pair of old Adidas, like the Copa boots, that I had, and I never took them off for about 3 or 4 days. But I remember with the leather being the leather it was, I had to wear them in the bath to try and soften them up a little bit, because they wasn't the real expensive ones. They was a little bit cheaper, so they needed breaking a little bit with the old Dubbin and Chelsea leather breaker in a little bit. So again, I'm showing my age now. So, but I had a pair of them. My brother probably give me an old pair of his, but he's size feet 11, a bit too big for mine. But yeah. A pair of old Adidas boots and a nice yellow Arsenal away shirt.
Who was the kind of one standout player for you that was really like a big inspiration for you? And was it even somebody in your position?
No, I think for me, my idol was Liam Brady. Although I was never left-footed, I was never cultured like him. What a lovely, lovely man. And lucky enough, I played actually in a testimonial game with him as well in Ireland. And that sort of was my highlight of my career. I had Paul McGrath, who I played next to, who was magnificent to be around. And then Liam, Chippy Brady, was in front of me. So it was, if I died and gone to heaven, I was fine, because I'd done it then. I played, although I'd played with Alan Shearer, I played against Henry, I played against Zidane, I played all against it. But just being with Liam was fantastic, and what a lovely, lovely man. So my fan, as a kid growing up, was obviously Liam Brady. That's who I felt with Arsenal. And then he went off to Italy and had a wonderful career. But when I was really thinking about the game was Brian Robson. When I used to be over the park with my brother, and I used to go past him, and he used to kick me down, or we used to take me down. I was always, Pop Robson, Brian Robson. He was my hero as a player. I remember in Mexico when he got that goal against France earlier on. And then I was lucky enough again to play against Brian, but also when I was in the England squad with Terry Venables later on, just before Euro 96, Brian was his coach. And I did my A licence with Brian as well up at Lilleshall. So, that's been a lovely moment for me to be around someone like Brian. And the type of person I am, I was like a sponge. I just would be around Brian and listen to his stories and how he would play, and just him as a person. And also the likes of, as I said, Liam Brady and Gazza, being around people like that. But to be able to be near my heroes was a very, very lucky thing for me. As I always feel myself fortunate that I had my career and I worked hard for it and I gave everything I had. But to be able to be with your heroes and be around them, and not call him a friend, but Brian, I could call a friend, because we've had a couple of beers together, we've watched games together, we've done coaching courses together. 14 days up at Lilleshall, you do bond with someone up there. So from that point of view, I was very fortunate. But them two people in particular, the ones that really inspired me, as well as my brother. My brother was an inspiration. I looked up to him. He helped me out, and he wasn't maybe the best player in the world, but he's my brother. So, you always look up to your brother. Yeah. Mind you, he used to treat me like his skivvy, by the way, as well, telling me to clean his room. But he still does that now, and we're 50 years of age. So that's what your big brother does.
What would you kind of say has been sort of one of the standout experiences which you've had along your journey?
Going back is making my debut as a professional. I had been non-league and been told twice you're not going to make it. And I actually went to Maidstone United and got, I think it was £250 a week. I could have gone to Barnet with Barry Fry and Stan Flashman and got 500 and bonuses and cars and tickets for any concert I wanted. But I wanted to be a professional. So when I made my debut against Peterborough for Maidstone, was a big step for me to actually, not that I'd made it, but I actually got to a level that I wanted to get to. And then ultimately, as I said, with that image in my mind of Alan Sunderland playing at Wembley, coming out at the Twin Towers, again, showing my age, but being at Wembley, doing that for Newcastle against my boyhood team, actually Arsenal, against that team in 98, and then going back again another year in 99 against Man United, who won the treble. Playing in the Champions League is always something that, as you get as a player, you want to be in that, playing against Barcelona and beating them 3-2 and playing against the likes of Figo, Rivaldo, Luis Enrique. They're the moments. And, playing And sometimes I take it for granted a little bit, but I remember a great player like Ian Rush saying to me towards have a look around where you're playing, because not everyone can do that. Not everybody. And this is Ian Rush, who won everything and was an outstanding goal scorer for Liverpool and Wales. And I remember sitting there at Old Trafford, 70-odd thousand people, St James's 52,000, Highbury, whatever, and playing against Henry regular, Giggs regular, and you sort of, in that moment, and you don't really do it. And then it's only afterwards, as I said, you retired a long time, you think, it weren't bad for a kid from North London that got told twice that you'd done. Okay, I never did what they did, won championships. I never, won the Champions League. I've never won a World Cup. I understand that. But I've done a lot more than, that I maybe set out to do. And that was through hard work and commitment. And they're the things that drove me on, even when I was at Newcastle, and you're up against competition about players, but every moment I enjoyed it. 220 games I played for Newcastle, and people always ask, "What's your favourite game?" Or what? All of them, because I know the game and I loved it, and I'd go play when I was 15, 16. We'd go with our mates over the park and we'd go and have a kick around with them. And I wasn't playing football to get a car or a watch or a new designer suit. I played it because I loved it. But as I said, everything I did, I played for. But, playing for your country is a big point. Making your debut as a professional, playing for, someone like Newcastle with them fans behind you. Great stories, being around people like Vinnie Jones at Wimbledon. When I first got my England call up, at that time, it used to be a fax. So Joe Kinnear would call people up, and we get people won't know what a fax is. So whoever they won't understand it, but Google it and look it up. So we get a fax. So, Vinny would do the statue and say, okay, we're great to have Warren's got his England call up with Terry Venables. He's going to go, next week with England. Great. So we do a training session. I come back. Everybody's like, I'm thinking something don't smell right here. Everyone's being too nice. So I walk out to my car, which was, it was a Saab. It was a nice car, but not, not what they have now. I only had one car. Everyone else has about 5 cars now. So I got to my Saab, and my tyres have been slashed. So I'm thinking, one, I ain't got the money to pay for it. I'm at Wimbledon, so I ain't got a lot of money to pay for it. And I said to Vinny, you're out of order. Why have you? I said, I never did it. I said, you effing did. I said, it's got to be you. If not you, it's going to be Mick Hartford or Robbie Earl or Scalzi or, someone would have done it. Turns out it was the owner of Wimbledon, Sam, man. He's the come down and slashed my tyres and didn't even give me any money to help it. But that's his way of keeping your feet on the ground and that we stick together. Although you've been selected to play for England, you're still part of the crazy gang and never lose that. And, you gravitate towards that. And they're all great memories, as I said, that I was lucky enough to have and enjoyed it. I could go on and on. I've had great, times with people like Stuart Pearce, who's a legend to me. He's one of the funnest people I know, and a great professional, and someone that we are very, very close with, and a good friend. Alan as well, Shay Given. The list goes on and on and on. I've met some really, really good people. Being involved in football, which I love, and that's one thing. I live in America and I love it, and the sun shines 365 days a year where I live, but I miss football. I miss that, being around football and walking to a stadium and just that feeling of seeing the kids over the park playing covered in mud and sliding and tackling and, them type of things is what I do miss, but I had it for 38 years. So I'll probably be back about 20 minutes and I'd hate it, but it's, that's what I love about the game. And, I was lucky enough, as I said, to answer your question, they're the moments that keep me going.
Was there ever a stage, and especially when those things happened, did you ever kind of think, do you know what, if football doesn't work out for me, I may have to do something else? And if that thought ever came around, what could you even consider yourself doing?
I'll tell you what drove me on. And again, I was at Leyton Orient and I was doing the old YTS scheme. Again, I think you're too young to remember this, but it was in part of the YTS, £27.50. You could work at Leyton Orient training 4 days a week. The other day, you had to pick a course at college. Okay. So me and a guy called Kevin, we done building and decorating. So we go to Redbridge College on a Wednesday. We'd go in there. I mean, we're trying to be professional footballers now. So we're having to do these bricks, lay the bricks out, and we're talking about how you scrub the paint down and do it. And anyone that knows me, I can't get my hands dirty. I hate it. So I was doing, and that in a strange way was like, I really don't want to be doing this. I really don't want to be laying bricks. It's monotonous. It's dirty. I don't want to be scrubbing doors and getting paint off a door. I want to be out there kicking the ball. So I actually, as well, again, another people that may have see my journey, I worked for a company called Arthur Anderson's, which was in the city of chartered accountants. It sounds glamorous, but I used to just give out the mail, giving out the documents. But I always think chartered accountants, it sounded important. So I did that. And I used to drive, again, where I live, over Hackney Marshes on my 50cc Honda motorbike in the pouring rain, freezing cold. I had no gloves, go and do my job, come all the way back and then play non-league. That's what drove me on. I thought, I don't want to go back to that. And again, full circle, when I finished at MK Dons, I went back with John Steele at Dagenham and Redbridge, and Terry Harris, who's at Maidstone now, and finished off my pro license because you had to be at a professional club. And I was there. And John used to say, look, do you want to still... I was 36, 37, said, do you want to still play? Because Rob Lee, a good friend of mine, he was still playing at Wickham. I said, I've been here. I don't want to go back here because I know what it's like. It's a hard determination. It's a grind. And I had nothing left, as I said, but they're the things that drove me on earlier on in my career. You know, as I said, painting and decorating, that really wasn't for me. Working in an office, I used to be looking out the window, you know, just thinking, I just want to be playing. So they're the things that kept me going, as well as not knowing anything else. Like I said, in my school bag, I just had a football. I didn't have a book. I just no pricking out or anything else. So I just used to play. So you know, they're the sort of things that kept me going. And even in your career, when you're having times about your confidence, or you go back to that and you think, okay, let's rewind and let's put it in perspective and what I need to do. And the only way you get out of this is by facing it and working hard and trying to get out of a hole that you're in.
When you're a player and you're preparing for a game, what was the music like before you started a match? And who sort of had control of that music? Or was there even music? Did someone just maybe take the pair of socks or the water bottle and start singing their own songs out?
No, we at Maidstone as well, when it first started with the music starting to be playing, and Wimbledon was anonymous with that as well. They started having the music system playing in the higher level, but at non-league it started as well. And we had Mark Gall, who lived over in South London, and he used to come in. He was the first one, Smokey, and we called him Smoke because he liked to smoke. But he would come in with his car and it blacked out windows and it'd be boom, boom, boom. The music would be going. So again, at Maidstone, Mark was in charge of the music. Particularly when I was younger, I was like 19. I thought, this is great. You know, I can get into it. But don't forget, we've got other players that are like 32, 33 that have been listening to Neil Diamond for most of their life. So they've got him coming in with a bit of techno, a bit of R&B, a bit of bashing around. And hip hop had started kicking in then as well. And so he would have that in our changing room at Maidstone. And then when also like raves started going around and all these different again, it's show my age, this house music, garage music. Gary Cooper would knew a few DJs at these certain clubs and send us a tape at the time, not a CD, would be a tape. We'd be getting on there and we thought it was the bee's knees. And then obviously we went to Wimbledon, and again we'd have like maybe Roger Joseph was in charge of the music, or Marcus Gow, or one of them. Don't ever let Fash play music because John Fashy has got the worst taste. Vinny started thinking that he was a bit of a DJ. He's the only, I said, he can't dance. How he's ever made a career out of acting and singing is a myth. But then we would have the music then blaring out loud as well. And we'd get someone that was maybe, Spoonie was starting to do his DJing and he's a big Liverpool fan. We'd ask him to send us some stuff. So at the 90s, when it started kicking in, the raves and all the garage music, and then we start having all that type of music. So yeah, it was amusing. But it was, what was so funny for us is to watch the older guys thinking, and they'd be like shaking their head. We had a guy called Les at Maidstone. We used to put the music on. It'd be mumbling. He was like the grumpy old man. I hate this. He'd go in the outside and have a cigarette. He would still have a smoke. And I mean, he was a good player, but he needed a cigarette. So we had the music there. And then obviously when we went to Newcastle, that someone would have the music. Alan again, Shearer has got the worst taste. He can't even dance, so he would just wander around trying to dance to some music going along. But it was all part of the motivation going forward. But yeah, it was all part of it. People thought it was cool and a bit hip hop and a bit trendy. Looking back, it was quite cringy, to be honest with you, but we thought it was cool at the time.
For you, if you say, for example, in training, there was a five-a-side team, out of all the players that you played with throughout your career, who would you choose to team up with you?
Shay Given for me was phenomenal. I was lucky with whether it was Xhaka or Pavel Cernicek. Neil Sullivan was a top keeper at Wimbledon when I was there and went on to have a really good career. But Shay would be in there. Well, this is a good one as well. I'd have to go with big Philippe Albert at the back, because as a defender, he had a sweet left foot and could control the ball. His passing was phenomenal. Peter Beardsley would be in there. He was, again, in that tight spaces. He was phenomenal. I've got to go with David again. Just give him the ball and this got to be players I played with or played against.
Hey, you can have a mix there if you want.
Well, no, let me go with players, because if not, I'd get people like Zidane in there, Henry, and things like that. So I'd have to go with Big Al, because he can finish. He's not really the most technical gifted guy in a small space, but boy, he could finish. And I'm going to go with little Norberto Solano, the little Peruvian as well. So there's obviously a big Newcastle influence there. Sorry, fellas from the crazy gang. There weren't too many people that control it in there, but that they would be the ones I'd have in there with Nobby and Shay, Philip, Ginola, Pedro and Alan. One of them would be on the bench. I'd have to put just to piss him off. I'd put Al on the bench, actually. Don't think he's ever been benched in his life except when Rude did it. So we'd have to put him on the bench. He could be my super sub.
For you, who do you feel was kind of the most enjoyable experience that you got underneath a manager?
Going to Wimbledon, and later on in my time there with Ray Hartford and Joe Kinnear. Ray Hartford was a phenomenal coach, and Joe Kinnear was perfect for Wimbledon, with our culture, with our understanding. And that last year in '94, we finished 6th in the league, and that's when I got my move off to Newcastle. Playing under Kevin Keegan was sensational. When it was going right with the entertainers, the football, the fans, the media, how he was with everybody. Terry Venables as a coach was sensational. I mean, if you think going into Euro 96, predominantly everything was like 4-4-2 or 4-2, whatever the systems that, there's only one or two systems that he would play. That he would play 3 at the back and have McManaman and Darren Anderton as wing backs, not fullbacks, wing backs. So, and then we beat Holland and Spain, and he was phenomenal. But for me, as I always go back to Sir Bobby Robson as a package, just tactically, he was phenomenal. Man management skills was brilliant. He's a gentleman, speaking to whoever it would be, whether it was, Mourinho or me or you or someone in a steward in the stadium. I remember being outside Selhurst Park, and we was awful. We lost the game. He spent 35 minutes talking to the steward. We're trying to get a flight to get home, and he spent there talking about the game, 45 minutes or 35 minutes about the game. But just as a person, I think the game has missed him. Because, where he was in Porto, in Holland, Barcelona, anytime you watch that documentary about him, and you look at Pep Guardiola now, and I know Pep's got his great ideas, and a lot of that is through the experience of Johan Cruyff, but I also think of I watched it with Pep, and the way he said about Bobby handled the pressure at Barcelona, the expectation, the way they moved him away, he took it with dignity and with a lot of pride. And I think Pep takes that on board and really respects that of Bobby. And you hear him say today about Roy Hodgson and David Moyes, how he is about that, still managing the game at that age. And just hearing Pep, I can hear a little bit of Bobby in him. I know, their paths only crossed a little bit for 18 months or whatever, but you hear that respect of the game and respect for each other. I mean, it's easy when you're winning, and I understand he's got the money, but he still says the right thing at the right time. Even when he's had a bit of controversy, he's still got a way of coming back. And I think he's took some of that, I would think, off of Bobby. So, if it's good enough for Pep, and, the way that Bobby's touched so many people in the game, if you could emulate someone, and the way he lived his life, and again, I had a big influence. I only had 4 years with him. And afterwards, was a mentor, if you like, because anything I had a problem with, I would ask him, and he would always pick up the phone and be there for me. Sir Alex Ferguson, again, had time with him, and I never played under Sir Alex, but if you're anyone, you're lucky enough, if you get 10 minutes, just be with him, because he epitomizes to me what the game should be about, even now, and that's the manager that had Steve Bruce, Brian Robson, Mark Hughes, then went to Cantona, the fledglings, and then went to Rooney and Ronaldo, and still won everything there was. So I think that shows you that you have that foundation. And for me, Bobby is in that mould. So Bobby, for me, would be someone that's given me so much in my career of how it should be. And if you're going to fail, you're going to fail. But if you're going to try and fail, do it the right way. And I think there's no shortcuts in what he tried to do.
So on the next part of the show is Tweet of the Week. And in Tweet of the Week, what we do is I find a tweet, which I found on Twitter, and we kind of look at the positives, the negatives, we argue for it, we argue against it, and we just have a bit of an overall general discussion on what our thoughts are on it. So this week on Tweet of the Week, we have, why are so many part-time academy roles low in pay or voluntary roles? Now, this is such a big thing. Like, it's been going on for years. And it's interesting because a lot of coaches, when they first start out in the profession, that's where they want to get to. And I don't think they realize until they get into those positions, either how low in paid it is, or how you may not even get paid altogether. What's your experiences of academy football and the types of pay structures that are in place? Yeah,
well, I've seen, when I first came into coaching, the pay was pretty decent, to be honest. And as a level 1, I was probably getting 20 quid an hour or whatever. And now you probably end up getting 20 quid after about 3 or 4 hours. So, I think I've seen the pay scales change. Maybe it was my own fault for getting so much work as well at the time. But when I got to UEFA B level and I was becoming a head coach for certain projects in the community, and the pay was really good, then I saw it change because the foundations and community teams were changing more into businesses, models and stuff like that. And then it was a radical change to the point where the hourly wage wouldn't really even cover your traveling costs. Yeah. So it's almost as if you're paying them to go to work, and it's not really sustainable. And when you look at the financial models within these clubs, if you were to look at, every club down to the National League, the main focus of their budget is the first team. Yeah. Now, if you were to take the top 200 best played players in the country, which they're all probably on 40 grand up a week, if you were to take £1,000 away from each of these players per week, it wouldn't really make a dramatic difference to their life, But if you were to put that from 200 players across one calendar year, which is 52 grand per year from 200 players, that's 10 million quid. If you put 10 million quid into coaching from players' wages, that is going to change the whole industry, in terms of creating lots of full-time positions in academies, creating lots of part-time even positions in academies and community schemes, And it's something that they need to look at from the top. And I'm pretty sure, if you took away £1,000 from a player, you wouldn't even notice it. There's probably a pair of trainers. You know what I'm saying? So, but for a coach, that's his rent for a month. Yeah. And that's the difference. Yeah. 100%. So, yeah. That's my opinion about it. And I feel like I've recently done a course with the PFA called On the Board with an effective board member organization. And it's a corporate governance certificate, and it's aimed at creating board members and more diverse boards within football and across many other industries. And the only way you can affect change in various different issues is to go to that level, to boardroom level, and have these discussions. And with the knowledge, skills, and experience I have of this field in coaching, it's something that you can, try and bring their attention to. And hopefully one day, I can get in a position where I can, help my peers who have gone through this journey.
Yeah, 100%. Well, number one, I didn't know that there was a thing like that, but that's fantastic to hear, number one. And We need more people like yourselves being included within that because of, number one, the way you speak, but number two, like I said, the experiences of your journeys through the coaching industry. And it's crazy for me to think that, and don't get me wrong, I think there are benefits to having players become coaches. There are benefits to that because obviously they have the technical input from it. They have the experiences of being in and around that environment, which is a cliche thing of saying. But a lot of the time, these clubs pay for their courses. They pay for their coaching courses. Now, again, even that money, if you took away that money from each club, and for example, typically they spend, I don't know, let's say 10 grand a year on players that they have at their club going through coaching courses. If they take away that, even that, putting that into, like you said, part-time coaches is going to make a difference. There's just got to be some way of motivating the coaches. When I do a lot of coach mentoring, typically, as you kind of mentioned, I was getting maybe £10, £20 an hour on the first like that coaching. And obviously, because from being younger, for me, that's like, give me the money sort of thing. I was more than happy to receive that. But as time goes on and you're trying to make a profession, and you're trying to make a living out of this industry, it's impossible. It's actually impossible to do that. And you have to take up another position elsewhere, and you have to do this alongside it. Because like you said, there's no full-time real roles within these positions. And then you're battling with being able to finish your job on time, get across to your session, then you finish your session, you get back late in the evening, you've got no time for yourself, and then it's go time again. So I kind of feel as though they need to find a way in which, like you said, they can make these positions more sustainable. And with that, a big thing I always try and think about is plan, do, review. But ultimately, when I spoke to coaches before and they go into these academy sessions because they're only there part-time, they think their session, pretty soon before they get to the session themselves. So how much effectiveness and quality and thought and, consideration has actually gone into that?
Yeah, I agree. You look at, the demands of trying to live, and, the amount of planning that you need to do to develop the future generation. And, if you can't do that effectively, then it's going to inhibit the future generation, and if, for example, like you mentioned, an ex-pro decides, I want to stay in football, I want to do coaching. And then somebody like myself, who might have 20 years experience or whatnot, will be overlooked by somebody who hasn't got any experience. And it's not to any disrespect to them, because they've been through a journey and seen it and done it and came out the other end. And it's something to be respected. And I remember your interview with Craig Bellamy, and he spoke about that. And he said, a lot of the structures, what they need to have is those coaches who are very experienced, who have understand the planning, the processes, these guys should be assisting the players who's also gone through a journey of playing, and being on the journey and felt it, because the messages are going to be different, but they're gonna support each other. They're gonna complement each other, because they're coming from two different, from the experienced coach and from the experienced player, and that's gonna help develop the next generations of players in a different way, psychologically. So, that's how I feel it should be.
Yeah, 100%. It's a great point you mentioned there about sort of, working alongside each other, because I agree. I think that, you have the two different aspects of looking at it. And I think what's crazy, and I know sometimes it happens within a work environment, just in outside of football, but, to have one individual who's on X amount, other individual who's on a hell of a lot less or a hell of a lot more is crazy, because they're both supplying the same type of support mechanism to the players.
Same service.
Yeah. And, they're not being sort of valued for their service to an extent.
I agree. You're not gonna get somebody who's done 20 years of plumbing and then somebody else who's done 20 years of swimming and say, okay, you've been in water for 20 years, so that means you can do plumbing. Come and I'm gonna pay you more. You know what I'm saying? So it doesn't work that way in any other industry. So, but I still think, and it's not no disrespect or discredit to the players, I feel like we're in awe of them for what they've done and what they've achieved. And I think they've got something massive to contribute to the next generation of players. And a lot of them are doing it the right way and going through the coaching pathway, starting with very young children and working their way all the way up, doing after school clubs, doing the stuff that we've had to do to climb up the ladder, you know, but some of them aren't, you know. So, and that's where you have to, you know, you have to look at it carefully and say, you know, is there some sort of process that needs to be put in place where there's a fairer playing field for all?
100%. And it's interesting because you mentioned there about sort of, like you said, like, you know, we've had to like go right in at the bottom, you know, coach, or say coach. To be honest, if you started out in coaching, it wasn't even coaching, it was just looking after a group of
babysitting.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, there's those experiences there compared to then obviously as we've made our way through the pathway and through the journey. And in a way, like you said, you know, it's almost like, imagine we're players and we start out a really young grassroots team, and then you grow up through the game, go into your academy settings, and you know, you go into your first team. Well, when it comes to coaching, that's totally overlooked because we're progressing through the journey, through the pathway, but then we're overlooked for all the experience in which we've gained. And like you said, I think that's the only profession where that actually happens. And my thoughts there are, well, what is the motivation of the coach wanting to be there? Now, I know within academy football, really and truthfully, the turnaround is so heavy. Like, you know, we've got a coach who's there maybe for 2 years and then they go on to somewhere else, or they might totally drop out of the game altogether. What kind of motivation do you feel that these clubs need to kind of dangle in the way of the coach and say, well, look, if you stay with us, even if it isn't a lot of money, this is where your pathway or your career will go?
I think, you know, even if you're volunteering, you know, there needs to be something given back. Okay, here's your expenses, or okay, we're going to pay for all of your courses for the service, for this amount of hours that you give to us. We're going to give you this. It gives you this guaranteed. For this amount of years you've been qualified, and you're not going to get an application process. You're going to get an interview straight away, you know. And for this amount of years of experience, plus your pay scale is there, and his pay scale is here, you know. So this is what, like, things need to be addressed in this type of way, and these types of incentives will let coaches stay in the game, and it will help them to not only, obviously, an incentive is there, and it will help hopefully increase their knowledge, increase their level of engagement with the club, the players, and the whole environment in general.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think that's right. I think, like you said, there needs to be some sort of incentive there. It's all fair and well, and I think this is one of the reasons why clubs probably do a lot of voluntary roles and do sort of, like, you know, lower in wage, because they kind of typically think, you know, well, working for our club, it should be something of pride, and, you know, you're affiliated to this badge, or you're getting to work with a higher ability of players, or you're getting, you know, the top facilities, top equipment, and that's fair enough. But, you know, ultimately, like you said, people like us are trying to make a career out of it, and you know, that is one segment of it. But what about the other, like, you know, 6 days or 5 days a week when we're not there? You know,
it's not an intentional thing. You know, I don't think the clubs intend to do this, but it becomes a discriminatory thing where it's only for young people that don't have kids or families, or it's only for pros that don't really need the money but fancy a bit of coaching or have a passion for coaching after they've played. You know, so, you know, this is where it's two ends of the scale. What about the guys who've actually gone through all of that young man stage? Now they've got a family, now they've got this, now they've got these responsibilities. They want to be able to even buy a house, for example. You know, like, these guys need to be looked after.
Yeah, and also you make a great point there. Like, I agree, and it might sound a bit stereotypical, but I agree. I think typically when you think of academies, it's either early stages of their coaching career, so like they're really young, like you said, no commitments, and they can be there at any given second, any given moment, and they're just happy to be there, really volunteering, pay. Or you've got total opposite side, which is something which I found out when I first went into sort of like academy settings and coaching environments, where you get an older generation, because actually, you know what, they've had their life, if you want to call it that, in their working jobs, and again, they're happy just to, you know, doesn't really matter how much they get paid, or they're going to be like X amount of experience. But actually, that middle in between bit, like you said, people who have kids, surely that is going to be more of a benefit, because they're with children every day, almost.
Yeah. And another thing I didn't really make a point of was it's almost turning into what they were complaining happens in the Premier League. The same people are getting turned over in the. We got David Moyes of the academy, Sam Allardyce of the academy. You know what I mean? It's the same people, you know, going through all of the clubs, and it's like that also makes you feel like, okay, it's a bit cliquey, it's a bit this, it's a bit that. There's no actual hope. Yeah. It's just a box ticking exercise to employ somebody within. All this sort of stuff. Like, you can look at it in a negative way, but there's people that have a passion for coaching and just try to turn it into positive and keep going. You know, so these are the challenges of the industry, and it's like I said, it's going to take somebody to challenge at the top who's been in our position to shed more light on this.
Yeah, 100%. And as well, like, it like blows my mind how much work you actually have to do. So we mentioned obviously before about the planning, you know, the reviewing, but now with things like the EPPP, like, you don't only have to be good, like being able to plan sessions and deliver sessions, but you also have to be good on the computer. You also have to do that away from actually your coaching role. And surely that is much of being asked for in terms of for the actual financial package that you're actually getting.
Yeah. And plus, you could do all that planning, all that delivery, but if you don't do that the EPPP stuff, then you're not going to get paid.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, you know, it's almost as if you're doing so much work and it works out as below minimum wage.
Yeah. When you, like I said, when you like, you know, spread it out, it does. And not only that as well, but they're asking now, it goes very back similar to the whole getting on an FA level 1 course, where to get on an FA level 1 course, you have to have a grassroots team. To get into a grassroots team, you have to have an FA level 1 badge, where now it's to get into an academy, you have to have X amount of qualifications. You might have to be, say, for example, UEFA B, but also you have to have experience of working in EPPP. To be able to work in an EPPP environment, you have to be at a club. So it's, you know,
well, not only that, if you want a full-time role, you need an advanced youth award. To get on the advanced youth award, you need to have a full-time role, or you need to have a role in the club. So it's like, you know, some of these requirements don't make logical sense, you know, unless it's, and this is where we say you got the Moises, the Allardyces of the academy, you know, platform that are getting these turned over because there's nobody else that have these qualifications.
And I think they're driving good people away. I think they're driving good people away because of that. Like you said, if people know, what's the point of, well, I was going to say, what's the point of even applying? But actually, I can't remember the last time I actually saw an academy role advertised anywhere. Like, hardly advertised. And if it is advertised, you know, it's up for a day or two and then it's gone again, because ultimately, as you said, they probably know who they're going to give it to, or, you know, it's an in-house type job. So that's another crazy thing as well.
Yeah, it is crazy. And, you know, I wouldn't want to dishearten people, because sometimes if you're an outstanding candidate, they could overlook that person that they may intend on trying to promote. And if you look at it from a club's point of view, if you're working for a club for a long time and then you're seeing people from outside always getting employed and then you're not getting promoted, that's another end of the scale that we're not considering as well. So there's so many different ways of looking at it. And the natural fact of the matter is they need to produce more jobs. They need to take a look at the requirements that they're putting in, because you look at some of the greatest coaches that I've ever coached in this country, like Sir Bobby Robson. Did he have an advanced youth award? No, he didn't. Do you know what I mean? So, like, you could be missing the next Bobby Robson. You could be missing the next Jose Mourinho who didn't play pro football, or Brendan Rodgers. These types of guys are here. They've been coaching for years. They need a chance. Sometimes they need to be put in straight at the top. Do you know what I mean? And they could change an environment. First team, 23s, 18s, or whatever it is, foundation phase. But they just need a chance.
Yeah, 100%. I think one thing that is quite interesting, and I'm so happy to see it, honestly, is the coaching placements that have come in. You know, and I think when a lot of people saw how much money is being offered for those roles as well, don't get me wrong, there's a bit of a question on why it goes down in the second year. I don't think it's as much in the second year as it is the first year.
I think it's one less month they're working. That's one.
Oh, okay, yeah. So, but I think things like that, good opportunities. What my question would be, and what I hope happens, is what's after. So, you know, you get these people come in, but then what? Are you going to keep them on, or you know, is it just going to be a rotation, as you mentioned before, a tick box exercise of, well, we've got somebody in for 2 years, but we're now going to get somebody else in for another 2 years, type of thing?
Yeah, I think if you look at it as well, it's an excellent scheme.
Yeah.
But it's only 9 jobs,
yeah,
9 different clubs. And it's to increase, you know, diversity within football. So you're going to have people of different races, religions, and sexualities and genders. And they're obviously going to have to pick across the board to show that they're being diverse and giving people a chance from different backgrounds. And it's very limiting because, you know, if it was like 9 roles at each club, it might not have been of much money, but it would have been a bit more diverse in terms of you've got 9 black people, you've got 9 females, you've got, you know what I mean, and so on. So, yeah, I think it needs looking at again. And again, the Premier League's got a lot of TV money, and, you know, I think, you know, it just needs revisiting in the future. And hopefully, like you said, what next? I hope if it's been a success, they put in a bit more and keep them on, you know, or bring some more people through the next time it comes around, maybe 3 in each category, you know.
Yeah, no, 100%. Well, hopefully this will be the first stepping stones, you know, like you said, to allow more diversity into clubs, to allow more positions, and understand that in getting individuals in on these full-time like roles, actually that might almost be a bit of a pioneer for, as we've kind of mentioned in the whole topic of, you know, roles not only being part-time and low pay, and roles not only being voluntary, because actually what you're paying for is for good people. You're paying for good people, good skill sets, good knowledge, and effective teachers of the game, really. Yeah. So yeah, but no, it's an interesting one, but hopefully with the sort of re-push of football, we'll start seeing some more positive change. But again, as I always say, people in the comments below, let us know what your thoughts and your experiences are as well on this topic. You know, are you coaching in an academy? What's your experiences like of being paid? Do you agree with it? Can you see the sides, or actually, do you know what, you're getting the opportunity to improve your learning and work with good players, and also work for some massive clubs as well? So yeah, let us know your comments in the box below, and let us know your thoughts. So for this week's Coaches Challenge, what I do is each week I give the coach who's with me on the day a specific challenge, and I let them know around a certain topic, specific outcome to the session, and kind of dictate around certain players that they may be working with, and see what type of session that they come up with. So for this week's Coaches Challenge, I have one part of a session that is suitable for an under-18s team of a good ability, trying to improve on combining on the ball in possession. So Sean, over to you.
Yeah, so I've gone for my favourite formation, which is combining in the attacking half in a 1-4-3-3. And I'm going to do a leading practice. So for the attacking team, I'm going to have a target player, a number 4 and number 8, which is locked in a zone. And you have number 10, number 9, number 7 and 11 locked into the final third. And what you have is a back 4 against the front 3 or front 4 players. And you have 2 opposing players in the locked in zone just over the halfway line. Eventually, there'll be an extra player added into the session, and that zone will be unlocked. So the number 10 has an opposing number 4 against him.
Nice. And when you do sort of like, sessions where you lock players in, how do you kind of look to try and progress the sort of, or motivate the individuals who are locked in? Because one of the key things which I find is that it's really good locked in sessions where it kind of, you can really hone down the techniques. How do you kind of get the motivation levels? What would be a good thing to point out to coaches to get these players up for it?
For me, I wouldn't leave them locked in for that long because they're under 18s. So it's not really going into much technique. It's more about tactical awareness and letting them understand what is the picture we're trying to create here. And the picture I'll be trying to create there is we're trying to get into the attacking third by combining quickly. And what's the relationship between the 4, 8 and the 10 being on different passing lines? When the ball moves from one side to the other, how does your body shape change? How does your position on the pitch change in order for us to try and penetrate that team quickly? And once they've shown that they understand the movements required and they show that they have a general understanding of what we're trying to achieve, we unlock that zone straight away and get it popping.
Nice. And what I love about that session as well is just the realism in football. How important do you think realism actually is within football, and being able to actually, it's not a game, but it looks like a game, it sounds like a game?
I think it's got to be as game related as possible because, like you said, they're under 18s of good ability, and they need to be challenged. And the only way you can challenge them is bringing in that realism. A lot of coaches tend to focus on patterns of play and getting it really nailed down technically. But then when defenders get introduced, then it all breaks down and that pattern really comes out. So, in the final third, it's all about, for me, creativity and finding the players finding their way through, and there's only so much a coach can teach, but the players can do a bit more. Especially when they have the ability to do it. So it's just recognizing that as a coach and creating the conditions for that to happen.
No, fantastic. And then just 2 more points I want to pick up on. So obviously when you do sessions like that, obviously, although you're focusing on the in possession stuff, obviously naturally the out of possession stuff will happen as well, which then technically turns into transition, which then technically turns into in possession again. So what would kind of focus be for the out of possession players when the practice initially starts? And then how would you progress it if, say, for example, your in possession team were getting quite a lot of success?
So this part of the practice is basically a lead-in to the main practice. So that's the reason why we want to create these pictures. And, when we do lose the ball in different areas of the pitch, they have an understanding, okay, negative transition, when we lose the ball, this is what is expected of you. Can we get compact? Can we press, get compact, slide across, stop them playing through us and so on? When we get the ball back, then positive transition, what can we do? What's our first thought? What pictures arise? What are the triggers for certain movements? And within this lead-in practice, they get an understanding of it. So then when we go into the main game, I can now work on the other players in terms of their triggers, because the players we've already built on those primary players and the lead-in and secondary players. Now it's those tertiary players recognizing the triggers of the movements of the front 6 players and building how we play as a whole.
Yeah, no, 100%. I love that. I love the terminology and also the aspect of the pictures and triggers and understanding when, where and why things are being done from a player's perspective. And then also as well, that whole on the ball, round the ball, off the ball stuff is sort of crucial. I think that links in really well with those sessions or those types of sessions because, some not to knock coaches who try this, but some of the uneducated coaches, they just let it play all the time. But what you're highlighting there is the importance of, although they're playing, is so much that actually goes into it: the thought, the consideration, the decisions, and the whole on, around, and off the ball stuff as well.
That's it. And I think, in different areas of the pitch, different players become active, and we've got to look at the what if scenarios. And sometimes if we go straight into that game and the what if scenarios arise, and players don't like to be stopped all the time.
100%.
They like to have the game flowing. And once you've addressed that in the lead-in, where you've got a bit of opportunity to stop it, then, when those what if scenarios arise, you can go around and float and give individual messages. You can give those key messages to key players at the right time that you might have for each individual, so that they achieve their outcomes for their role.
Yeah, no, 100%. No, listen, I think that's a fantastic session. Like I said, the detail that's gone into it, the sort of aspect of it's a whole group session, but being able to actually go in and intervene with the individuals as of when, and as you mentioned earlier on, I think it's one of the discussions, understanding when to go in, when to go out, and how much time you spend in between. I think those sort of sessions are crucial for that, because it allows you to do that and allows you to put your coaching head on and understand, as a coach, what are you going to affect and how are you going to affect it almost.
Yeah. And sometimes that session might even become your main practice, because you might not have that many players turn up, or some players are recovering or resting or working with another coach. So what you'd look at then is, how do I then turn that lead-in into a game, and maybe put some constraints there, or put some mini goals on the halfway line, and make it exciting for the players, and, create a practice that delivers the outcomes for you, so that, the players are enjoying themselves, which is the main thing for me.
Yeah, no, 100%. I love that as well, the bit about the progressions, where, like you said, the ability to be able to turn it into a game, but also as well put those little, I say conditions in, but those little mechanisms in on the pitch, whether it be, goals, whether it be areas that they're traveling to. It just creates a whole good forward environment for players to motivate and want to achieve the intended outcome or objective, I feel.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's quality. But no, listen, fantastic session, Sean. I think it's definitely hit the outcomes and the objectives of that. Again, as I always say, people in the comments below, let us know what you think of the session. Have you tried out anything similar with your age group? Would you try this out? If you would, what sort of challenges and progressions would you put into it? Maybe thinking about things you might do prior to the session, and also, as well, as Sean's mentioned, it's a leading session, so how would that look, obviously, if you went into the later session as well? But yeah, no, fantastic session, Sean. And again, as I mentioned, people, put your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Okay, so that's the end of this week's Daily Coaching Football Show. I obviously want to say a massive thank you to Sean for joining me today. His knowledge, expertise, understanding of the game and of the coaching industry have been instrumental to today's discussions, and also the session as well. So Sean, first of all, massive thank you and for taking the time to join me today. And do you have sort of any channels where people can check you out and see all the good stuff that you're doing? Because I know that obviously you've got some interviews which you have out at the moment. And also, just from listening to you and the people who have been listening to you as well, can see the knowledge in which you have, which might want to get in touch.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me on, David. I respect you very much and the work that you're doing. And for those who want to get in contact, follow my page at Footy Consultancy. Follow our YouTube channel and subscribe, which is called Footy Consultancy 2. We're on Twitter as well and on LinkedIn. And if you want to send me a message on the email, my email address is support@footyconsultancy.com.
Fantastic. No, listen, it's been a pleasure and an honor to have you on. Seriously, your knowledge is something else. And I'm in awe of your knowledge, and I'll always try and watch some of your videos and take the inspiration away from the interviews that you're doing. Obviously, as he's mentioned, go and visit out the YouTube, subscribe to the channel. They've got Arsenal legend Paul Davis on there as well, which is a fantastic listen. So yeah, honestly, it's been an incredible insight and honor to have you on today, Sean. But yeah, as I said to people, make sure you go and subscribe to the channel, go and follow him as well, show him some support and some respect for being on and giving out this knowledge, because honestly, as we've been talking about the pay of coaches and things like that, some of the things that you've been dropping, people will pay good money to take that on board. So no, I really do respect that. And obviously, as always, to make sure you don't miss out on one of the Daily Coaching Football shows, make sure you subscribe to this YouTube channel. And yeah, all I can say is thank you for joining us, and I hope to see you at the next session as well. Take care, and I'll see you soon.